This video brought to you by my YouTube members and patrons. Thank you guys. How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another subreddit video. Today we're going to be returning to r/entitledparents, a subreddit dedicated to parents who think they're entitled to a lot more than they are. Apologies for the lack of war paint today. I have had a morning and I just don't have time to do it today because I've been cleaning up after the cats because someone, not naming any names, the king of the underworld, decided to eat all of the hair ties off of my desk and then vomit them all up all over the living room floor, and I've had to spend the morning cleaning that up. Luckily, we don't have carpets. Thank God. That's it. That's all I have to say. Anyway, entitled parents. Very quickly before we begin, I just wanted to mention YouTube members and patrons. You guys get an extra video every single week. That's for as low as £1 a month. So if that is something that interests you, please do consider joining, as it will really help support the channel. Other than that, let's get into the subreddit, shall we? Entitled dad tries to demand I let his daughter play on my Switch. I, 23 male, had a doctor's appointment earlier today, and I took my Switch because I knew I'd be waiting for a while. So I was sitting in the waiting room, and after a while, a dad with a little girl, probably 5-6 years old, walks in and sits on a couch across the room. A few minutes pass, and the little girl gets up and sits in the armchair next to the one I'm sitting, and starts leaning over to watch my game. I was fine with that, because she wasn't doing anything at first, she was just watching. Though, I thought it was kind of weird that the dad didn't do anything, and just let his daughter sit next to a random guy. Anyway, I didn't do anything, I just kept playing and let her watch. Then she reached over and tried to grab my Switch, so I pulled away and looked at the dad, and he was just watching like nothing happened. I'm pretty shy, so interacting with people in awkward scenarios like that is a challenge. But I called him and said, "Hey, your daughter just tried to grab my game. Can you ask her to not do that, please?" And his response was just, "Let her play. What's the problem?" I let my girlfriend's brother play with my stuff all the time, but I don't know this kid, and given her attitude, I couldn't trust that she wouldn't break it or do something like that. So I said, "No, she can watch but not play." And bro got mad and said something in the lines of, "I should let her play because she's bored and I'm a grown man and she's a little kid, so I should let her have it." I just said no again and moved to a different seat and kept ignoring them until the doctor called me in. Bruh, I thought people like this were internet skits. So first of all, terrible parenting. Terrible parenting just from the standpoint of watching your daughter go and sit next to a random stranger who you have no idea who is, right? Regardless of where you are or what the stranger's doing and what your daughter's doing, letting your 5-6-year-old daughter just sit next to a stranger who you have no idea who is a bit of a dodgy move to do. That's not something you should just be doing in this day and age. But on top of that, if she's bored and you think that she's entitled to a stranger's Switch to alleviate her boredom, should you as the parent not have brought her something to alleviate her boredom? Should you as the parent, you know, the person caring for your daughter who's taken her to the doctors, knowing that she would get bored, not have brought like a phone or an iPad or a Switch of her own for her to play with so that she doesn't have to harass strangers and try and steal their tech? In what world is your daughter entitled to a random stranger whom you have never met games console? In what world would that ever be the case? It doesn't matter how old the stranger is, that's their property. Your daughter is your responsibility, not theirs. Entitled mother told me I should share my apartment balcony because her kids wanted to use it for fireworks. I rent in a mid-rise building with small balconies. Last night, I'm out watering my plants, and downstairs, neighbors' kids are yelling up at me. Their mum leans out the window and goes, "Hey, we were thinking you could let my kids come up on your balcony later to set off fireworks. It's safer than street level." You want your kids on my balcony with explosives? They're not explosives, they're just little rockets, and you don't even use your balcony for anything except plants. Don't be selfish. When I laughed at her and said absolutely not, she huffed that she'd tell the landlord I wasn't being cooperative with neighbors. Spoiler, landlord laughed too when I emailed to preemptively explain. This morning, I found 2 soggy bottle rockets in my potted basil, so I guess she let them try anyway. How the hell did they get up there? Is there just like a staircase up and she let them literally just sneak onto your property? Because if she's going up into your balcony without permission, even if she has access to and is able to get up there, that is still an invasion of your property. That's a crime. She's committed a crime. She has allowed her children to knowingly commit a crime to try and set off explosives on your balcony and fail at that, but that's a crime. That's just a big old crime. Once again, terrible parenting. Feeling entitled to someone else's home, that you should be able to just use their home so that your kids can let off fireworks. Also, is it safer to set off fireworks from a balcony versus ground level? Especially rockets. Like, if you're doing rockets properly, if you're being safe about them, you know, you're staking them in the ground properly, you have pointed them in a proper direction, and you are getting out of the way before they launch properly, and preferably making sure an adult is doing that, they should be safe. You shouldn't need to launch them from a balcony, you know, like the majority of people that don't have balconies. But on top of that, I would argue that a balcony is less safe, actually, because fireworks, especially when launching, they let off a lot of sparks, right? A lot of spray. A balcony is a hell of a lot closer to the inside of someone's house than a garden is, right? If a garden lets off a spray onto a damp lawn, then that's it. They let off a spray onto a damp lawn. If they let off a spray onto a balcony with a door leading straight to someone's property, yeah, you can close the door, but it's still a hell of a lot less safe than letting them off on a damp lawn. The logic doesn't even track. Girl Scout mum tries setting up table at the gym I worked for. A few years back, at old gym I worked for, one woman I was training asked me, could her Girl Scout troop be able to sell cookies at the table she could set up? I told her it's up to my boss, and in my opinion, a gym isn't an ideal place to sell cookies because people are there to work out, not buy cookies, especially if they're trying to watch their weight and sweets intake. The woman asked my boss, who is her cousin, and my boss politely declined. The following week, she sets up a table and has her daughter and 2 scouts, as well as another adult, asking people if they want to buy cookies. One of my co-workers got my boss's attention, and my boss went to talk to his cousin. The two got into the biggest argument, and the woman shouted she's entitled to because family helps family. My boss comes back inside, and on their way to his office, he gets approached by a woman patron who says she knows the troop council and she'd give her a call. Before long, a representative arrives and asks the people to leave. The gym was not an approved location for selling cookies. The woman tried saying, the owner of the gym is my cousin. He said it was okay. My boss, who was outside hearing this, tells his cousin, again, I didn't give permission to the troop council. The troop representative again tells her to pack up and go to where they were assigned or risk being kicked out of the scouts. The woman leaves in a grunge rage and says, so much for counting on family. Update, I forgot to say they didn't sell a single box of cookies. All the gym patrons all said no thanks on their own because they were more focused on maintaining their fitness routines over sugary treats. Yeah, it's just not a good place to sell them regardless. Like, even if you had gotten permission, even if she had gotten permission to sell these cookies, that's just a place to try and sell cookies. People going to the gym are doing so because they're trying to refine their bodies and exercise and lose weight. Cookies are not the right thing for that. The gym is like the opposite of eating cookies, right? That's just stupid. There's so many better places you could set up. So many better places. Especially given that apparently she had an assigned place to be selling those cookies. Probably somewhere that the Scouts Council decided was a better place and they're more likely to actually sell cookies. A gym isn't it. It's just not a good place to sell them. Also, being family, you know, being related to someone doesn't entitle you to just do whatever you want with their business. That's not how family works. That's not how business works. But now it's time for a cat break. And now, back to the video. Entitled Dad wanted me to let his kid use my laptop at a coffee shop. I was working at a coffee shop with my headphones on, just typing away, when a dad and his little kid sat nearby. After a few minutes, the kid started peeking at my screen and then asked if he could play games on my laptop. I politely said it was for work, but the dad jumped in and said, come on, just give him a few minutes. He bored. I laughed nervously and said no again, and the dad actually scoffed and said it's not like you own the internet. At that point, I just packed up my laptop and left before I lost my temper. Like, seriously, who does that? It's not like you own the internet? What does that mean? You're right, he doesn't own the internet, but he does own that laptop. He doesn't own the internet, sure, so give your son a device that you own. You know, that thing that you have a responsibility as a parent to do or not do is buy things for your child. It's not a stranger's responsibility. I wasn't expecting this to be the episode of parents asking strangers to just let their kids use a stranger's tech. Like, I don't get it. Not only is it not safe to be going up to a random stranger with your kid and going, can this child use your technology, please? That's not a safe thing to be doing, but also it's so entitled. There's just no way that makes any sense to be doing that. Just none. There is zero reason that is a logical thing to be doing. Your son is bored. Okay, that's your responsibility, not a stranger who's trying to work. Aunt demanded I give her toddler my iPhone because you do not need it. At a family gathering, I casually mentioned that I might upgrade my phone soon. My aunt's face lit up immediately and she said, great, you can give the old one to my baby. Her baby is 3 years old and still puts crayons in his mouth. I thought she was joking, so I laughed. But she was serious. She repeated, why not? You'll not need it anymore. I explained that I usually trade in my phone or sell it because it's worth money. She looked shocked, as if I had done something terrible, and loudly told everyone in the room that I was stingy with family. Meanwhile, her toddler was happily smearing cake all over the couch. Apparently, in her mind, a 3-year-old needs an iPhone more than I need the money for an upgrade. Couple things. First of all, yeah, entitled. Obviously, it's another person asking someone else to give tech to their child. Second of all, iPhone trade-ins are insane, right? Like, the amount of money that you get back on an iPhone is a surprisingly large amount, okay? When I traded in for my iPhone, I've got an iPhone 16, and at the time, that was the newest iPhone. I know the 17's out now, I don't care. I traded in like an iPhone SE, like a really old phone. No, XR, in fact. Really old iPhone. And I still got like 100 quid or more off of the iPhone for that. Like, Leo traded in a much newer phone. I think he traded in like the 13 for his, like a 13 Pro Max. And he got like a few hundred, like £300 or £400 off of his. Like, the trade-ins make a huge difference for upgrading. Like, I upgraded from a really old phone to a very new phone, and it was affordable. You know, granted, I also financed it, but like trading in made a huge difference on that. With Leo, it was an even bigger difference on that. So yeah, trading in is something you're going to be wanting to do with an iPhone because you get a decent amount of money back. And when you need that upgrade, you need that upgrade. You're not going to have the phone left over to give to someone's 3-year-old. Also, what does a 3-year-old need with a phone? She's just trying to raise the iPad generation, and it's not good. That's not good, right? Phones are really destructive, okay? As someone who uses their phone a hell of a lot and gets a lot less done as a result, raising children on phones isn't a good idea. They need to have boundaries. They need to understand the risks and how to use a phone safely and how not to get addicted to social media and mobile phone games that are just out to sap your time and money, right? Giving them to a 3-year-old doesn't teach that. It does the opposite. You're basically giving your child crack and going, here you go, spend the rest of your life addicted to this crack. Because corporations have spent the last 10 years making these platforms as addictive as possible because it makes them money, okay? The cost of people doesn't matter for the addiction that it drives, right? Giving that to your 3-year-old is a terrible fucking idea. Just the worst idea. I will genuinely never forget, okay? This is one of those like boomer moments, like boomer blue. I'm a boomer at 25. So I used to work at an aquarium and I was front of house, right? My job was talking to people about the animals in the aquarium, you know, giving them facts, giving them information. I would also host shows. We would do talks, that kind of thing. Quite often we get school trips in. School trips, great. They're a bit rowdy, but quite often you get a lot of interested children that really genuinely like talking about, you know, the rays or the sharks or the interesting fish you've got, right? However, there was one kid that was being obnoxious, like just really misbehaving, being a problem. And you know what the response was? The teacher didn't tell the child to stop. They didn't tell the child not to. They didn't tell the child to stop putting his hand in the tank that he kept putting his hand in, that you're not allowed to put your hand in. What the teacher did was give the child an iPad. The teacher gave the child an iPad in an aquarium to distract them, to stop them misbehaving. What the Like, I genuinely feel like this is my super villain moment. Like, that as a moment, witnessing that happen, witnessing that unfold was genuinely like, what? Huh? What? That's the level we've gotten to now, where a teacher, right, instead of trying to control their students in an aquarium, just gives their students an iPad. I did not know how to react. Entitled Mom insisted I let her eat snacks without paying. Yesterday at the grocery store, a little boy grabbed a bag of chips from the shelf, ripped it open, and started eating, right there in the aisle. The mum looked at me and said, "He's hungry. You don't want him to stay hungry, right?" When I suggested she should pay first, she rolled her eyes and said the store is huge, one bag doesn't matter. Then she literally told me to mind my own business while her kid was dropping crumbs everywhere. The worst part is she didn't even take the bag to check out. She just tossed it on the freezer like it was trash. Honestly, I was shocked. What a great example she is setting for her child. Yeah, just steal food. Steal the food that you need. Just do it. The shop won't care. It's just one bag of crisps. Saying mind your business to the person whose business it is, the person whose job is looking after the shop, is a wild thing to do. Mind your business, she says as her child steals from the shop. What the fuck? That is their business. That is their job as someone working in the business you were stealing from. Minding their business is making sure you're not stealing from the shop. What the fuck? What a stupid thing to say. What an absolutely stupid thing to say. Oh god, these parents are terrible. They're the worst. It's so bad. But that is where I'm going to end the video, everybody. I hope you have enjoyed. Oh boy. If you would like to support me in making more content like this, then I have a Patreon in the description down below. Or equally, you can click on that join button on the channel to support me. It helps a lot more than you might realize, but by no means should you feel like you have to. I'm going to keep uploading content regardless. But a huge, massive special thank you to all of the wonderful YouTube members and patrons that do support me. All of your names are up on screen right now, and it genuinely means so much. So thank you to everybody that does. Genuinely, you have no idea how much it helps. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you have enjoyed, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Peace out.